Okay, I'd like to call the Budget Review Committee to order. It's Monday, May 23rd, 2022. The meeting is commencing at 7:38 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber and via Zoom, which meeting link can be found on the agenda. Let's start by taking a roll call attendance. If you're participating via Zoom, please state your presence, reasons for not attending a meeting in person, and whether there's anyone in the room with you during the meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Richard A. Dowd.
Present.
Alderman at Large Michael B. O'Brien. Alderman John Cathy is here. Alderman Ernest Jetty,
Here.
Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
I'm here.
Alderman John Sullivan.
Here.
And Alderman at Large Lori Wilshire.
I'm here.
You have 6 in attendance and 1 not in attendance.
Okay.
And also in attendance, Transit Administrator Camille Correa.
Yes.
And Chief Operating Officer, National School District, Dan Donovan. And Director of Community Development, Matt Sullivan.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
All right. First item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone like to be heard in public comment? Seeing no one? Communications? Would be none.
None.
Unfinished business?
None.
New business resolutions?
R-22-027, authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $3,700,000 for the replacement and upgrade of radio communications equipment. Mr. Chairman, I motion that motion R-22-027 be recommended to the Board of Aldermen.
Okay, the motion is to recommend R-22-027 for final passage. Discussion? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I see that in this legislation that this is slated for the fiscal year 22 capital improvement budget, seeing as we're discussing the fiscal year 23, which will include that. The timing around that, why now, why not earlier in the fiscal year? Just wondering.
I'd only be speculating. That would have been a question for Mr. Mansfield, but it probably has to do with researching and availability of the hardware.
Okay, I will follow up with him.
Okay, any other? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Alderman Cathy?
R-22-029, authorizing the mayor and the city treasurer to borrow an amount not to exceed $6,900,000 through the issuance of bonds and/or a loan through the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services State Revolving Loan Fund for the wastewater treatment plant dry well valve replacement project. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to motion that R-22-029 be recommended to the Board of Aldermen
For final passage.
for final passage.
Okay, R-22-029 has been recommended to the full board for final passage. Discussion? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see that we can either bond this or we can borrow it. According to this, if we bond it, it's a 4% interest. Do we know what the interest rate is on if we borrow it in the low interest rate loan program? Is that a question for Mr. Griffin?
It would be. Mr. Griffin isn't here. However, his able assistant is. Cheryl Linder, would you please come up? Does everyone know Cheryl?
Hi, Cheryl.
Hello. Gail, how are you? Is that, oh, sorry. That's okay. There, thank you so much. This is probably the lowest this microphone will ever have to be. Cheryl Linder, Treasury Management Officer. We did ask our counterparts at the Department of Public Works, and Right now, they can get a loan from the state for around 2%. So we'll go with the lower rate, whether it's a loan or a bond. Right now, our bond rates are higher. So, so the loan will probably be the way we'll go, but at the time we borrow, it will depend on the interest rate. And if you have additional questions, I'm happy to follow up with you, and I can check back in with DPW as the time gets closer to see where we're at.
No, it's fantastic, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions, Alderman Kelly?
I had the exact same question as Alderman Sullivan.
No.
Okay.
We're
Same
good.
answer.
Got an answer, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Alderman Jettie?
I don't have a question, since I became an alderman, I've been astounded by how much money we spend on our wastewater treatment facility. And, and every time something like this comes up, I'm just overwhelmed by the cost. But, I've learned that we really don't have a choice. Our wastewater treatment facility is an essential part of the city infrastructure. We can't ask everybody to hold it. So it's going to make its way to this facility one way or the other, and the cost is astounding, but it is what it is. And I just want the public to know that we're not looking for ways to spend money. This is something that's essential, and we really don't have a choice. We're under federal the federal government mandates how we run this wastewater treatment plant. So I just want everybody to know that we really don't have a choice. We have to do this.
All right. I think I saw Alderman Kelly first, and Alderman Wiltshire.
Thank you, I just wanted to piggyback on that. I know that as this has come up, I have asked Superintendent Boucher what we're doing, because I believe what Alderman Jettie is pointing out is that we've had a couple of years of a lot of things that had to get fixed when Superintendent Boucher came on. There were a lot of things that were in disrepair and needed to get forward. So correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was that he came on, he did a lot of repairs that needed to happen, and has put in place an opportunity for us to be more on top of maintenance, so we don't end up having to do this over and over and over again, because it is costly, but there's not much we can do about it.
Okay. Alderman Wiltshire.
Thank you. And Director Boucher did mention that one of the parts or the piece that they're replacing was from 1972. That's a 50-year-old piece of equipment. I mean, that's pretty good. That's 50 years. So,
So if you
Good money.
amortize that cost over 50 years, that is
yeah.
as much as one would think. Alderman Kathy?
Correct me if I'm wrong, to Alderman Jettie's point, weren't there some years ago where we were not putting enough money into the wastewater treatment facility, which is why in these past couple of years, we've had to sort of play catch-up to get it where it needs to be, and then obviously more work will be needed to keep it maintained.
It's the old, pay me some now or pay me a lot more later. Yes.
Okay.
Alderman Sullivan?
It's a comment, but, well, maybe it is a question. But doesn't the wastewater treatment plant pay for itself? Isn't it almost, it's one of those entities in the city that as much as it costs to run it, we do take in fees and whatnot that pay for it? Cover the cost?
Is there anyone that can?
It is an enterprise fund,
It is an enterprise fund.
and they do get the wastewater fees that the public pays, but I don't know if we subsidize it at all.
That will be part of the budget discussions with the BPW.
Right.
There's the wastewater and there's also the solid waste. And I think the wastewater is more self-sufficient than the solid waste, but
Yes.
there may be some things we have to cover.
Yes, and my first glance at the budget, it looked like we were subsidizing solid waste, but wastewater was paid for itself.
Pretty close.
Yeah, I don't know what this does to it when you add in the.
This is a bond, so reflect in the budget,
Okay.
in the wastewater budget. I don't know if she does. Cheryl, do you have any clarification on that, or?
No, that's a great question. We can check into that and follow up with you. That's okay, Alderman Sullivan?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
Uh,
so, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Alderman Jennings?
Yeah, on that point, I'm not a financial expert, and certainly not a municipal financial expert. But, your point, is probably accurate. The wastewater facilities are paid for by the users, but those users are us, Those users are the taxpayers, they're the same people that's paying it. So, by our approving the expenditure of this money, we're causing the fees that we have to raise to pay for it, we're causing those to go up. So it's not like it's, the people who are paying the wastewater fees are the taxpayers. So it's the same,
Point
it's the
taken.
same, your point is well taken, but it's,
Yeah.
really doesn't make
I
any
think
difference.
More or less, the question was, if we bond something, the bonding is paid for through the debt service we do for bonds. It won't show up in the wastewater yearly budget numbers. Bonding isn't in there, it's separate. So when we bond something, the debt service on that bond is paid for via a portion of the budget that covers debt service for bonds. And there is a part of the bonding that's for wastewater, so it's segregated, but you won't find it in what used to be the green pages, which are no longer green pages. But that again can be discussed in further detail when we have the BPW in. Any other questions? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
R22-030, relative to the transfer of $25,000 from Department 194 Contingency, Account 70100, General Contingency, to Department 109 Civic and Community Activities, Accounting Classification 56, Outside Agencies, for the purpose of providing funding to the Nashua Association for the Elderly.
Motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to motion that R22-030 be recommended to the Board of Aldermen for full passage.
R22-030 is motion is to recommend final passage full board. If anyone desires, we have an expert on the subject sitting in the audience, if you'd like to hear from her. Alderman Karen, would you just give us the history
Honorable.
of this particular activity? I know, you gotta put that up a little higher.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is June Karen, 24 Montgomery Ave, and I am a member of the Board of Directors for the Nashua Senior Center, and also with me tonight is the President of the Board, Martha Ackerman, who came. As you know, for many of you, the Board of Aldermen over the past 11 years has provided approximately $25,000 for the Nashua Senior Center, for them to put money away for emergency funding and also to utilize the rest of the funds to provide maintenance and upkeep to the building that belongs to the city. Last year, you were gracious enough to give us the money, and we were able to redo our thrift shop, which hadn't been repaired since the building's been up, which has been X amount of years. So this year, because of changes that are going on with internet, we really need to upgrade our internet service, computers that we provide for our members of the community. And we felt that this year, that in the legislation, we would ask if we could utilize that $20,000 for that purpose. And just for the public's notice that the Nashua Senior Center is a nonprofit. They are not funded by the city other than this approximate $25,000. Everything they get is from revenues or fundraisers and donations. And obviously, the city has provided them a building in which they could have their members and their organization located. So I hope that you will find in favor of our request. If not, you will not get any more candy. Thank you.
Thank you. Former Alderman Karen. As she said, we've been doing this for 11 years, and it's worked out very well. And it supports some of our most important citizens in the city, and there are a number of them there all the time, and it's a great activity. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Alderman Kathy?
R-22-031, authorizing the city of Nashua to enter into contracts with the Souhegan Valley Transportation Collaborative, Nashua Community College, Rivier University, Town of Hudson, and Town of Merrimack for transit services. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to recommend final passage of R-22031.
Okay, that motion is to recommend final passage to the full board of R-22-031. I believe that Director Sullivan is here. Would you like to provide some overview and insight into this? Oh, back up.
Thank you. I'm not Cheryl, I can say that, but I'm not, also not the tallest. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm actually quite useless this evening. I'm actually only here to introduce Camille Correa, the transit administrator for the Nashua Transit System. She will be providing some background information relative to R-22-031. I'm certainly available to answer any questions that you might have about broader context, but she, being the administrator for the system and also the subject matter expert, is best positioned to provide this overview, and will be doing so this evening. Thank you.
Ms. Correa.
Thank you, Matt. The Transportation Department is pleased to present to you this evening 5 revenue contracts for your review and approval. Each contract represents a continued partnership with the following in order to provide public transportation: Rivier University and Nashua Community College for their students to ride for free on the fixed route service; Souhegan Valley Transportation Collaborative, the Town of Hudson, and the Town of Merrimack to receive van service and curb-to-curb public transportation service within their communities and also to and from the city of Nashua from their communities. Each one of these contracts is effective from July 1st of 2022 through June 30th of 2023, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have in regards to the revenue contracts.
Alderman Kelly?
Thank you, and thank you for coming forward. I think the transit system we have is very important in the city. I'm just wondering if, and I've seen the universities in the past, but I'm wondering if Hudson and Merrimack is new or expanded, or is it just, again, a typical renewal of what we've already been doing?
Thank you for asking that question. We're so excited to have a continued partnership with the Town of Merrimack, the Town of Hudson, SVTC, Rivier, and the Nashua Community College. All of them have been great supporters of public transportation for many years, and if we could have a continued contract with each one of them, we would. And in this case, it is a new contract for fiscal year 23. However, it is more of an annual contract if we could do so. And it's great to have their support, and thank you for the question.
Thanks for the answer.
Any other questions? Alderman Jettie?
Thank you. So I just want to clarify for the public's sake, these contracts are, you know, where Nashua Transit is providing transit services, but we're getting paid for it, right? It's not costing the city anything, if I understand it correctly. It's actually bringing revenue to the city to help us pay for our transit services.
Yes, sir. In regards to Rivier University and Nashua Community College, the funding that they provide, or the contract revenue that they provide, assists with buying down fares for the students so that the students can ride for free and the public transit service can receive the money for the fares directly from those organizations. And for SVTC, the town of Hudson and the town of Merrimack, that is revenue for the service, direct service providing, or to provide the direct service.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions, Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a logistical question. If I'm in Merrimack and tell me how it works. I mean, who do I pay? Do I buy a bus pass? What does that look like? And the same for Hudson.
For the town of Hudson and the town of Merrimack, there are application processes where someone could download the application from the website or receive it in the mail. They would fill out the application, and then we would tell them about the service, provide a brochure for them so that they would know what time that service would operate, which is Monday through Friday. And then we would work with them to schedule their appointment. They would pay the fare when they would board. And the fare in each one of those communities would be dependent upon where they're going. And for example, SVTC is $2.50, and the person could either utilize a coupon from SVTC to pay for that ride directly, or they could pay with cash or a ticket, and then we would bill the remaining amount of the transportation trip to that actual organization on a monthly basis, depending upon the number of riders in their community.
Okay?
All set?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Correa. All right, the motion on the floor is to recommend to the full board final passage of R 22-031. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman Cathy.
R 22032, approving the cost items of a collective bargaining agreement between the National Board of Education and the Nashua Teachers Union, Local 1044, AFT, AFL-CIO, Unit D, food service workers from September 1st, 2021 through August 31st, 2024.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to recommend to the full board final passage of R 22032, approving the cost items of a collective bargaining agreement between the National Board of Ed and Teachers Union, and including the food service workers from September 1st, 2021 through August 31st, 2024. And I noticed that Mr. Donovan is here to explain just how that contract works. Mr. Donovan. I know we have a very busy day, so you can sit down.
Good evening. So before,
Name and title.
Daniel Donovan, Chief Operating Officer for the Nashua School District. Before I go run through the summary of the cost items, just to let everyone know, this is part of the Food Service Special Revenue Fund. So it's not, these costs are not borne by the operating budget, by the taxpayers. It's a self-sustaining fund. Revenue comes in from sale of lunches to students, faculty, et cetera. That revenue is enough to pay for the cost to run the program. So and this contract pays for not the management, but for everybody else. So basically a quick summary. Oh, and one other point. This year, for the first time, we had free lunch for all students. So the federal government put through a policy that there's free lunch for all students. The interesting thing that did, typically the revenue from this fund, about half of it comes from people paying, and the other half comes from basically the government subsidizing free and reduced. This year, it was free lunch for all. So if you give free lunch to a high school student, they're gonna take it. So interesting enough, the revenue has really gone up this year. We had hoped that the free lunch for all would extend into next school year. At this point in time, it is not. They're still discussing that down in Washington. Different states are talking about it, et cetera. But at this point, the free lunch for all we're planning will end this year, and we'll move forward next year with the standard model. But that may change. So, quick summary, it's a 3-year contract, September 21 through 24. So basically, we're pretty much done the first year already. The increases per year, including steps in the wages, is 3.71, 3.3, and 3.4 over the 3 years respectively. We did something a little different with this contract this year. Because we have excess funds due to the free lunch for all, and because we were short-staffed this year with people, we couldn't get enough staff to work the lunch program. The people that worked the program were pretty stressed out, so we decided to put into this contract what we're calling a stay-on bonus. So that's $800 this year and $800 next year. It's paid out halfway through the year, 400, halfway through, at the end of the year, the other 400. The employee has to work 81 of the 90 days for the half of the school year. So we figured since there was more revenue coming in, it would be good to share with the staff, especially those staff that were working to make up, to work extra time and extra stress trying to get the lunch done when we were short-staffed. So that totals about $60,000 in the first year. We're assuming it'll be slightly more in this coming school year if we have more staff. Other than that, they did agree to the city insurance due to the fact that the contract's coming through now as opposed to the open enrollment just ended. That won't become effective until next year, but they have agreed to that. And then other than that, we did give, there are 3 levels of employees. There's tier 1, which are the cooks, the full-time people. But for tier 2, the staff that helps out, in tier 3, we did give them each 1 more sick day. So tier 2 had 4, we gave them 5, and tier 3 had 3, we gave them 4. And the final cost item is there was a clause in the contract guaranteeing the number of days that they would get paid. It became tricky at times if we had a lot of snow days, and then we decided to reduce the number of school days. So we have an agreement towards the end that if we're going to cancel up to 2 days, then there's no guarantee that they could get paid. If we needed the services, we'd have them come and work. If we canceled 3 days, we'd guarantee them 1. If we canceled 4 days, we'd guarantee them 2. So that was just to sort of clean up the whole idea of people getting paid for not working. That's something that personally I don't like that. So they agreed to that language. Typically, there's not too many years where we cancel too many days, but sometimes if there's a number of snow days, we will switch to hours, because you can switch to hours taught as opposed to number of days as far as the state is concerned. So this sort of clears up any issue we'll have with that. So those are the items. Just the one other thing on the costing sheet. If you take a quick look at the costing sheet, down at the bottom where it says, the increase per employee, it's 9.1, 4.1, and then a minus 2.9. Those numbers are pretty much driven by that sign-on bonus that I mentioned earlier. So that in this first year of the contract, there's an extra $60,000, which is the sign-on bonus, thus pushing up the percentage. That number stays there for next year, and then there is no stay-on bonus for the 3rd year, so therefore that's why it drops so much. So that is a quick summary.
Questions? Alderman Kelly?
Thank you. You mentioned that they agreed to the city insurance. I assume you mean the high deductible plan that most other unions have been switching to. Is that the case?
Yeah, the higher, the HMO and yes, the new offerings.
And if I could follow up.
Follow up?
Just a comment, not a question. I just wanted to say that I think this group of people have gone through a lot in the city, and they were incredibly powerful and helpful with getting school lunches out during COVID. I know they were there preparing and making sure they get on the buses early COVID. So I think the sign-on bonus makes a lot of sense. It seems like a fair contract, and I have a whole nother spiel about free school lunch that I would love to see. I really would love to see it stay. I think it's really important for equity issues, and kids will just take the food. And to your point, I think it's really important, and we've seen so many times that kids learn better when they're fed. So hopefully the federal government will continue that program, but I think it's something that really has done a lot of good. But thank you.
Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. I see that you plan this contract to fund 90 positions, and if my math is correct on the stay-on bonuses, you're at about 75.
Correct.
Right now?
Yes, because
Yeah.
we're just not, we don't have enough staff right now. And typically, there's turnover in especially the Schedule 3, the part-time, they don't tend to work. There's a lot of coming and going for that group, so.
Right, and if you're budgeted to pay 90 people and you only pay 75 people, does that money just roll over into the next year? I mean, where
Yes.
does that surplus go?
Yeah, since it's a special revenue fund, the money stays in the fund.
Yep.
And it rolls over from one year to the next.
Got it. One more question?
Sure, follow on.
I see that the contract is retroactive to October of 21, I think.
Yeah, September, I believe.
Sorry, September of 21. The folks, do they get a lump sum kind of retroactive payment? Is that how that works, or is it paid
Yes.
out over time?
Yes, by the time this is approved, and, I mean, they work until the last day of school, so, yeah, we'll do a retroactive. We'll give them their raise in one paycheck, and the next paycheck we'll give it a retroactive. We may do both since it's very late in the year, but that's typically what we do.
Okay, thanks.
All set?
Mhm.
Any other questions? Alderman Jettie?
Yes, when you talked about providing, free lunch to everyone and the revenues went up, it kind of reminded me of the joke about the guy who charges less than his cost and he makes it up in volume. The free lunch is free to the students, but we actually charge for those lunches, and is it the federal government that pays us for them?
Yes, the federal government has a price per lunch that they pay. So for every lunch we sell, we get back, it's about $3 per lunch. So the whole volume thing, when you're making certain items, the volume, if you can sell all of those, whereas prior to this, when there was paying, like, we can only charge for the lunch we served to a free and reduced to the government. So if you had excess food, you couldn't charge for it. Now, if we make the exact amount, we can charge more, so. That's basically what happened. It actually, it turned out to be more money than we projected. The balance in the fund right now is higher than it's ever been. It typically, at the end of the year, rolls over about $300,000. This year, it's gonna be significantly higher than that.
Well, good. Well, I hope you're able to get it again.
Yeah, because this also buys all the equipment, and so we'll be able to take a look at that. Yeah, it was not in the initial, at the federal level, it was not in the initial budget, but there have, the federal budget, as we know, goes back and forth. So we'll see what happens.
Good. Thank you.
Additional questions? By the way, the equipment at Elm Street is going to be fully replaced at the new school with brand-new equipment, and whatever is still usable will go to the other schools
Oh, that'll be
to
good.
replace the equipment, so that will be good.
Yeah, hopefully there's some items there that can replace older items at other
Yeah,
schools.
and we're redoing the entire cafeteria at Pennachuck this summer. So, all right, no other questions. The motion is for final passage of R 22-032. Recommend final passage. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business ordinances?
There are none?
We are not taking anything off the table, because that's Wednesday.
Okay.
General discussion? None? Public comment? No one. Remarks by Alderman? All right, thank you everyone for coming this evening.
Nobody raised their hand.
And do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to motion that the May 23rd, 2022 Budget Review Committee meeting be adjourned.
Motion is to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned at 8:13 PM. Thank you, everyone.